In this video, we're going to talk about built versus bought, why it really doesn't matter, and what's actually important.
Who's there? Connecting rod. That's good.
This is all just my opinion, so take it all with a grain of salt, or tell me how wrong I am in the comments below. Leave your opinion, guys, because really I try to bring this up as a group discussion. I was going to go on Instagram Live to talk about this, save the video, and put it on here, but chances are that would turn into a 3-hour-long conversation. This is already going to be a bit of a rant, ramble, whatever you want to call it, as is, long enough as is. So for those unaware, built versus bought, maybe you've heard the term before, you're not quite sure what it means. Maybe you've never heard the term before, in which, luckily for you, awesome. Just do yourself a favor, shut this video off right now and just keep doing what you're doing. Built versus bought. Basically just guys who build their own cars, whether it's taking a stock car, doing a full-blown race car build, or taking like a rust bucket and restoring it back to like showroom condition. Whatever the case may be, it's somebody who's bragging about doing all the work themselves. And listen, those of you watching this that are getting all tight in the panties right now, I'm not trying to discredit you. I just have been on both sides of this. Hear me out. You guys have earned a certain type of respect, though I'm going to try to not use that word respect in this video, because this rant is really to try to stop the divisiveness and stop the whole respect, bow down and respect me mentality. Because the truth is, it's kind of really nice to just buy it already done or pay somebody to do the work for you. And that's really the truth. If you want the cliff notes of this video, all that matters is you figure out the most efficient and timely manner to drive your car. No matter what you do, if the thing's sitting up on jack stands in your driveway or sitting at a shop for 5, 6, 7, 10 years straight, nobody gives a fuck how you got it done because you're not driving it. So who cares? While you're sitting there, 10 years later, when you finally finish your car and you're running around bragging about how you built it, the rest of us are out here enjoying our cars, not really caring about how we got it done. If you build it yourself, you deserve every bit of that extra reward, because there is no better feeling than that first startup. And I go on and dive into this rant, having a dog in both sides of this fight. I've been on both sides of this. I've built my own sport truck over years. I got it basically stock and did all sorts of cool shit to it. I put 4 or 5 different motors in it. They were all 8 valves, so at the end of the day, they're still slow, no more than 150 horsepower type builds. But there was no better feeling than every winter that thing came off the road for the 3 to 6 months during winter downtime, giving it another new update, whether it's a built head or a bigger cam or a new transmission that I pieced together myself. There was no better feeling than that first drive come springtime. See all these broken parts up here? We got bent valves up here. We got a smoked cam up there. We've got a whole smoked head or two back there in this disaster. If you're wondering what the really bad side of building shit yourself looks like, this is it. Just disorganized chaos. Unless you have all the time in the world and you don't work a conventional job where you have a ton of money or space, whatever have you. If you're more fortunate than some of us, then maybe you have a ton of space to lay all these parts out and hoard all these secondhand parts and used parts and backup parts. But the reality is, sometimes that's what it looks like. By no means am I saying that this is the golden rule, like my experience is definitely going to apply to yours, because that's definitely not the case. I'm not saying just because you decide to go build it yourself that you're going to end up looking like a slob like I do, or, it's just my experience and what I've seen is one of the biggest drawbacks to me trying to do all my stuff myself all the time. I'm in the middle of purging my stuff. Just last year, I had 5 engines sitting there where the sewing table was. I had 8 transmissions in the shed. Another 3 engines stuffed over there. I just got rid of another engine the other day. So we're actually downsizing. This is the kind of cleaned up version of what it looks like when you're trying to build shit yourself all the time. And the last 2-3 years, I've been okay with just buying stuff that's already built or buying other people's built motors ready to go. Prime example, the Silver Rabbit. My 79 Rabbit has a built motor in it. It's not like anything crazy. It's still a slow car. It still only makes 110 horsepower. That's got pistons, rods, cam, port work, you know, the whole nine. It's got mostly everything touched. High compression, big cam, yada, yada, yada. You know, that car is a prime example of somebody's already done project, which honestly has saved me a lot of money. I've built a very similar motor multiple times before. You're just spending more money on new parts or like new parts and putting them in yourself. There's really not a whole lot, unless you're welding the car from scratch or doing some very serious fab work. There's not much light building you can do that's really brag-worthy, in my opinion. At this point, I've built 4 different motors of that magnitude before, and it's a lot of fun, but I've only done so because I get those parts at a really good deal. It gets very expensive very quickly building the stuff yourself, and I think that's the major drawback. And the same thing with the Dasher. I bought that with the 1.6 turbo diesel already swapped in. Not to say that when I finally came across that car, I knew exactly what I was going to want in it, but that is right along the lines of how much power that car needs for it to be enjoyable and not be doing 25 miles per hour up some of these mountains I got to go over every day. The 5-speed transmission that they also never came with is already swapped in there. So to buy that car with the bulk of the work already done just made it that much more likely that I would buy the car in the first place. So in that specific case, it's either buy the car and hate it once I realized how bad the factory non-turbo diesel and 4-speed were and get rid of it, or have to spend who knows how much more money and how much more time looking for the parts to do a similar swap or some kind of swap to make it more enjoyable. If I'm not having to waste time and money finding a good drivetrain or a more preferable drivetrain on the car, and then also have the downtime of it being off the road while I figure it out or do the swap, I could spend my time, money, and energy elsewhere on the car where it could also use it. But also, failure. Having catastrophic failure, that'll really throw some sand in your grundle, you know? That's not a really good feeling. It's one thing to spend $2 or $3 grand building a motor that's just kind of mild and nothing too crazy, but it feels really good when you do it. And the first time you start it up, there really is no better feeling than that first startup of something that you put together yourself. But there's also no worse feeling than a couple months later, you're going down the road, you hear a little valve tick, you're like, oh, let's just do an Italian tune-up, all the oil levels are fine and the oil's fresh. Next thing you know, wiped out your head at 8,000 RPM. So that'll set you back quite a few thousand. I'm not saying that this is the only deciding factor is cost and failure points, but the other thing is time. You could have your car laid up for a year or two straight just trying to source engine parts or figuring out the direction you want to go with your build, only to backtrack a couple months later or halfway through the build. The short of it is you could spend a lot of time trying to put something together, whether it's an engine or an entire car, and it just not come out great to begin with. Or, like I said, catastrophic failure. To me, the most important thing is ending up with that car not drivable. You know, that my old sport truck, I only ever had that off the road for a combined time of about a year and a half tops. But I don't think it was even a year of combined time that truck was off the road and not daily drivable. Because of the 8+ years that I owned that truck, I daily drove it for almost or at least 7 of those years, spring through fall. And that was the best part about it. That was probably the only thing I've built so far to that extent. You know, I had the old Tan Rabbit. I did a nice little cool ABA-JH build and did some nice, you know, budget tweaks to it to see what we could do. I'd consider that engine a little bit of a build. I still kind of consider that, like, not really a build at all. I don't even consider the sport truck a build. You know, overall, we won't even go down that road of what's a build and what's not a build, but that would be the closest thing I've ever done that I consider a build. The van, I'm still not going to go run around saying, oh, check out my build. Watch the videos of my LS swap build, like, because we're just bolting parts together and throwing it in the van. So at the end of the day, most people bragging about built not bought, what are you actually building? Are you actually building something, or are you just bolting a couple parts together, slapping it in your car? I wish I had the money to pay everybody for all my work. This is exactly why I traded Matt an entire Mark I shell and all the parts I had for it in trade for helping me do the majority of the work on the van. And I'm still going to be there most of the way through. I'm still going to do as much of the work as I can. Really, as we're diving into it, we're using his shop, we're using his knowledge, and he's going to help kind of organize and guide me through it. He's definitely going to come in handy and do a good amount of work. You know, for example, you guys saw when we did the cam swap on the motor, getting it ready to put in, that was mostly him doing the work on that. At this point in my life, I have to work a lot to afford all these toys and all these fun cars. And I have no shame saying that the Lotus I just sold, that just so happened to be wearing this shirt today, so didn't plan this, but the Lotus is a prime example of, like, you could build that yourself at home, but why would you do that when you could just buy one already made? Yes, there's tons of guys in the 7 community that have built some very badass home built, literally built from scratch, taking blueprints that they bought offline and welding the tube frame together themselves. Those guys are actually building stuff. So if you're watching this and you've built a 7 from scratch, my hat's off to you. You're part of the 1%, in my opinion, who's actually building your shit. Kudos to you. Contrary to what I just said, that car is a prime example of, like, buying something that's ready to go. You know, back to this whole, like, what is built versus bought really mean? It applies to everything. Whether you're buying a car that's already had the swap that you want done, already had the paint restoration that you want done, or a full-blown drag car that you just would never have the time or funds really to build from scratch, because that's the truth. The best benefit of buying something already done, unless you're paying a shop, you know, these are kind of muddy waters here. If you're paying a shop to build the car for you, yeah, that gets very expensive very quickly. So that's, you know, there's no golden rule for everything we're talking about here. But the main benefit to buying something already built is the money you're saving. You know, you're buying somebody's secondhand project. You're buying something that somebody already bought all the parts brand new for, put it in, drove the car for a few years, and they're bored of it, or they want to free up the money. That's the best case scenario, saving a ton of money building something that you would build anyways. And we talked about the Silver Rabbit briefly before. That's exactly what I want in my daily driver. A cam, a little bit higher compression, the right transmission, something with enough power to be safe in modern day traffic. That's like the biggest drawback to the old Rabbits is in stock form, they really just don't make enough power to be safely merging into traffic on the highway and things of that nature. So for me, anytime I get a Mark I Rabbit, my first thought is, how do I get 100 plus horsepower out of it to make it much more comfortable and really safe on modern roads? I'd be into that car for twice as much as I am if I were to get it in stock form and build an 8 valve for it myself that matches exactly what's in there. The valve cover alone is worth $300 or $400 if you can find one. With all that rambling being said, I want to finish off with just saying that if you're the type of person who's watching this and you've built your car to whatever extent or whatever the word build means to you, you deserve that extra reward, that good feeling of doing it yourself. I'm not trying to discredit you guys by any means. I just hate to see when people are posting in, just do it yourself. Why are you going to do it? Why are you going to waste all the money paying a shop? The truth of the matter is life. If you can afford to pay somebody else to do it, why not? Chances are that's going to get them going, driving, and enjoying that car sooner than if they try to do it themselves and end up selling it halfway through because they realize they're in over their heads. Last thing I'll say, drive your cars. No matter how you get to doing it, just drive your cars. What's the point of wasting all this money on them if you're not going to drive them? So, thanks for watching, guys.